snow fell like ashes from a broken sky, covering everything in a thick, silent blanket. Captain Ray stood near the edge of Outpost 9, looking out into the frozen desert of planet Arcanus. He had been alone for 6 weeks, doing research and guarding old tech ruins left by the first explorers. It was a quiet planet, too quiet sometimes, the kind of quiet that made a man go mad. That's when he saw her. A figure stumbled through the snow. Blue-skinned, thin, and nearly naked, she walked. Like her legs were broken. Her eyes were half closed, face pale and weak. Ray grabbed his thermal scanner, but it didn't read her properly. Her body temperature was too low, below freezing. Something was wrong. She fell, face first into the snow. Ray ran to her without thinking. When he reached her, she opened her mouth and whispered in a cracked voice, "I'm freezing. Give me a blanket and my body is yours for one night." Ray froze, not because of the cold, but because of her words. He didn't know if it was a joke, a trap, or just desperation. She tried to speak again, but her eyes rolled back and she passed out. He picked her up gently. Her skin was like ice, yet somehow still alive. He rushed her inside the outpost and laid her on the heated floor, wrapped her in 3 thermal blankets, and activated the med scanner. Not human, the machine. SUD, warning, unknown DNA, compatible oxygen. No signs of infection. Ray watched her sleep, confused. She looked young, fragile, maybe even beautiful in a strange way. Her hair was silver white, her fingers long. Her body shimmered faintly under the lights, like frost in sunlight. Hours passed, she didn't wake up. Ray kept checking her pulse. Her heart beat slowly, but it was steady. He wondered who she was, where she came from, and why she was alone on a dead planet. Then something moved. Her eyes opened, wide and glowing with soft violet light. She looked around, confused and afraid. Her voice was weak but clear. You're not like the others." Ray stepped back. "What do you mean? What others?" She blinked slowly, struggling to sit up. "They told us humans were all dead." Ray's heart skipped a beat. "Who told you that?" She shook her head. "The ones who made us." Ray sat down across from her, not sure what to say. "You said you wanted a blanket, and..." She raised her hand weakly. "It was a survival instinct, an old phrase we were taught, a code. It means I trust you." Ray laughed nervously. "Strange kind of code." She looked down, ashamed. "I thought I was going to die." Ray nodded. "You almost did." There was silence, broken only by the sound of the wind outside. He wanted to ask more, but she looked too tired. He gave her a hot drink. She held it with shaking hands. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "They called me Lyra, but I don't know if it's really mine." Ray looked at her closely. Her eyes seemed older than she looked, like she had seen things no one should. "Why are you here?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled something from under her blanket. A small glowing crystal, barely the size of a thumb. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Ray leaned forward. "What's that?" She looked at the crystal with sadness. "Home. What's left of it." Then she whispered, "They're looking for me. If they find me here, they'll kill us both." Ray's hand went to his blaster. "Who?" She looked into his eyes and said with fear, "The hunters." A cold wind blew through a crack in the wall, but it wasn't from outside. It was something deeper, something darker. Something had followed her to this planet. Ray stood up and checked the motion sensors. Nothing yet, but that didn't mean they weren't coming. He looked back at Lyra. "Rest now. We'll talk more when you're strong." She gave a small nod. Her eyes slowly closed again, but just before she fell asleep, she whispered something he barely heard. "Not all humans are dead. One still lives. And he's more dangerous than all of them." Ray sat in the corner of the room, staring at the fire. The snowstorm outside grew stronger, but the real storm was just beginning. Ray woke to a strange sound, not outside, but inside the room. It was like humming, soft and cold, like wind trapped. In a bottle, he looked over at the corner where Lyra slept. But she was no longer on the bed. She stood by the window. Wrapped in a thermal blanket, her eyes were wide open, glowing faintly violet again, and in her hand, the crystal pulsed with slow, steady light. Ray stood carefully. "You should rest." Lyra didn't turn. "I don't sleep like humans do. When my body rests, my mind remembers." She held up the crystal, and it flickered. A bright flame shot through the core for 1 second, then disappeared. Her voice grew distant, like she was talking to ghosts. "I remember fire, not from war or battle, but from birth." Ray stepped closer. "What kind of fire?" Lyra's hand trembled. "The kind that burns everything. It touches but leaves nothing behind. Not ashes, not memory, just silence." She turned to face him, and something about her had changed. She looked stronger, but also haunted. "We were made in a lab, not born. Rows and rows of us, connected to machines. They said we were designed for peace. But they lied." Ray listened, silent and still. The room seemed colder now. "They taught us stories," she continued, "of a world we could never visit. A blue planet filled with green trees, soft oceans, and voices that laughed without fear." Ray knew that world, once Earth. "They told us humans destroyed it," she said. "That we were built to never repeat your mistakes." Her voice cracked like dry ice. "But the ones who made us were worse than anything they feared." She sat down slowly, the crystal still glowing in her hand. "They used fire to control us, to burn the weak, to test the strong." Ray sat across from her. "So you escaped?" "I didn't run," she said. "I survived. There's a difference." There was a long pause. The wind outside howled louder, but inside, only their breathing remained. Ray stood and brought over a datapad. "This planet was once a human science station, but it went dark 20 years ago. No one ever found out why." Lyra looked at the pad and shook her head. "That's not true." Ray raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She placed the crystal onto the pad, and suddenly, the screen lit up. Lines of strange symbols appeared, not human code, but something close. "I was here before," she whispered. "This was one of the last places we were tested. The ones who built us left something behind, something they didn't want you to find." Ray leaned closer. The screen showed a symbol now. A circle inside a triangle, pulsing red. "What is it?" he asked. Lyra stared at the symbol. "It's called the Ember Key, a map, a warning, a weapon. It leads to the place they burned the truth." Ray looked at her carefully. "Are you saying there's more of you?" Lyra nodded. "Many more. Some still sleeping, some not." Suddenly, a loud beep rang from the outpost's motion sensors. Ray ran to the console. The camera feed showed a faint shape in the distance. Tall, armored, and moving fast. "They found me," Lyra said. Standing, her voice cold and sharp. "The hunters." Ray grabbed his blaster. "Can we run?" She looked at him, calm but sad. "We can't run from fire, Ray. We walk through it. Or we die in the smoke." The screen showed 2 more figures joining the first. They carried long weapons and moved without sound. Ray looked back at her. "Why do they want you so badly?" Lyra walked over and picked up the crystal. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Because I still remember what they tried to erase. Because I am the only one who can unlock the Ember Key." She looked out at the snowstorm where the hunters marched silently through the dark. "And because I am the last daughter of their failed empire." Ray stood beside her, unsure what he had been pulled into. But one thing was clear. She wasn't lying. And this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something hidden in the fire of the past, waiting to rise again. The storm outside was no longer just wind and snow. It had a rhythm now. Like footsteps, slow, heavy, growing louder with every second. Ray stared at the motion sensor screen. 3 red dots moved closer to the outpost. One stopped, then moved sideways, flanking them. The others came straight. "They're not rushing," he said. "They're hunting." Lyra stood by the wall, her body calm, but her hands tight around the crystal. "They can smell fear," she whispered. "And they know I'm not alone anymore." Ray loaded his blaster. How do we stop them? Lyra turned, her voice flat. We don't stop them, we survive them. She walked over to the main console and pulled open a hidden panel beneath it. Inside was a strange object, a small silver disc, etched with ancient lines. Ray had never seen it before, and this was his outpost. They left this behind, Lyra said. It's a door. A one-way key. To where? Ray asked. She looked up, her voice shaking now. To where the others sleep, the ones like me, the ones who didn't make it. The lights flickered and the temperature dropped. Ray raised his weapon. Are they already here? Lyra nodded. One of them has the frost device. It steals heat from the air, from skin, from breath. Outside, a shadow passed by the window, then stopped. Ray aimed but saw only fog and movement. Suddenly, the outer door's lock began to beep. Someone was hacking it, not with code, but with something else. Something primal. Ray looked at Lyra. Do they know you're inside? She didn't answer. She stared at the door, eyes wide. Whispering to herself in a language Ray didn't know, the lock turned green. Click. The door swung open slowly. But no one entered. Only a blast of cold wind filled the room, so strong it blew papers into the air and made Ray's breath turn white. Ray stepped forward, his weapon raised. But Lyra stopped him with a soft hand on his shoulder. Wait, she said. Watch. A tall figure appeared in the doorway, wrapped in bone-white armor, face hidden behind a smooth black mask. It held no gun, no sword. Only a long staff with a glowing core at its center. Lyra stepped forward, eyes burning. Rackle, she whispered. I thought you were dead. The hunter tilted its head. And then, in a deep synthetic voice said, You made sure of that. Ray was shocked. You know him? Lyra didn't answer. She raised the crystal and it glowed, but dimly. The hunter raised its staff and slammed it against the floor. A shockwave pulsed out, knocking Ray to the ground and making the lights explode in sparks. Darkness, only the keen glow of the crystal remained, floating like a heartbeat in a void. Ray coughed, ears ringing, vision blurred. He saw Lyra stand tall, the wind whipping around her like she was part of it. You want it? She shouted, holding the crystal high. Come and take it. The hunter rushed forward, silent, deadly fast. Ray fired, but the shot bounced off its armor. It reached Lyra in seconds. But the moment it touched her, the crystal exploded with light. Blinding white energy blasted outward, throwing the hunter across the room and burning part of the wall. Silence returned. Ray sat up, heart racing. What was that? Lyra fell to her knees, the crystal now cracked in her hand. The last of its charge, she whispered. I can't use it again. Ray helped her up. Then we have to run. They'll send more. Lyra nodded. There's a temple nearby. Under the ice, we can reach it through the tunnels. If we get there, I can recharge the crystal. Ray grabbed a small backpack and some gear. What's in the temple? Lyra looked at him with fire in her eyes. A map, she said, and the truth they buried with it. As they left through the back tunnel, Ray looked back one last time. The hunter's body was gone, but something was written on the broken wall in black ash, in a language he couldn't read, but somehow understood. One lives so none may sleep. He didn't know what it meant. But the hunt had only just begun. Asterisk. The tunnel beneath the outpost was older than Ray expected. It wasn't human-made. The walls were smooth and curved, marked with thin glowing veins like frozen lightning trapped inside stone. He held a torch in one hand, blaster in the other. Lyra walked ahead of him, holding the cracked crystal near the wall. Wherever she moved, the glowing veins seemed to follow, pulsing softly like they remembered her. Ray finally asked, Who built this place? Lyra didn't answer right away. Her voice came soft and distant. My kind didn't build it. We just woke up here. The path twisted downward, the air growing warmer, thick with the scent of dust and time. Strange symbols were carved into the ceiling, bones, eyes, hands reaching for stars. Ray stopped in front of one carving. Is that a human? The symbol showed a man standing tall with fire in both hands. Around him, smaller figures bowed. Some had wings, some had tails. But all of them had one thing in common: fear in their eyes. Lyra looked at it and whispered, "They called him." "The first flame," Ray raised an eyebrow. "A legend?" "No," she said. "A creator." They reached a wide stone door, shaped like a broken shield. The center had a handprint, but not hers. It was bigger, human-sized. Ray looked at her. "Try mine?" Lyra nodded. He pressed his hand against the stone, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ground shook, the door cracked open, air hissed out, warm and dry, inside. An ancient chamber glowed like a forgotten memory. Bones, thousands of them, covered the walls, not scattered, but arranged in shapes, spirals, stars. Even words in a language no machine could translate. Lyra stepped forward and closed her eyes. "This is where we learned the truth, where we saw the lie." Ray followed slowly, taking it all in. At the center of the room, floating above a stone pillar, was a thin disk of light. Inside it spun a 3D star map with a red dot flashing deep in an unknown system. Lyra approached it, and the disk responded to her presence. The light sharpened. The red dot expanded into a new image, a dark world. Cracked and glowing at the core, Ray stared at it. "That's not a planet. That's a prison," Lyra nodded. "They buried something there, long ago. Something they feared too much to destroy." Ray stepped closer. "What is it?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "It's what's left of the first flame." Before he could respond, a cold wind swept through the room. Ray spun around, gun raised. "We're not alone." From the darkness behind them, a figure stepped out, not a hunter, but something worse. Its body was thin, long, more bone than flesh, and its eyes glowed red with hunger. It didn't walk. It drifted, like a shadow tied to nothing. Lyra grabbed Ray's arm. "Don't shoot. It feeds on sound." Ray froze, holding his breath. The creature stopped, sniffed the air, then turned to the bone wall and pressed its face against it. As it did, the bones shifted, forming a word: return. It looked back at them, face twisted in pain and hope. Then it vanished into dust. Ray let out a long breath. "What was that?" "A memory," Lyra said. "This place remembers everything, even the dead." Ray turned to the floating map again. "So this is it. This is where your people were made." Lyra shook her head. "No, this is where they were erased." She reached out and touched the map, and in that moment, Ray saw through her eyes, labs full of broken clones, firestorms washing over cities, voices screaming names never spoken again. He pulled back, sweating. "Why show me this?" She looked at him. "Because you're the only one left who can stop it." Ray didn't understand. "I'm just a soldier," Lyra whispered. "No, you're human. That means more than you know." Suddenly, the stone beneath their feet shifted, revealing a new path, narrow and deep, leading far below the surface. Ray looked at her. "Another tunnel?" Lyra nodded. "To the vault where the ember key was first lit." Ray checked his weapon. "The battery low. If the hunters catch up before we reach it?" She smiled faintly. "Then we'll burn before they do, together." They stepped into the dark below, leaving the map behind. The bones on the walls shivered, and somewhere in the dust-filled silence, an old voice whispered, "Flame returns to flame." The vault was not what Ray expected. He thought it would be a room, a chamber, maybe a lab, but it was alive. The walls pulsed slowly, like a sleeping heartbeat. Every step echoed like it was being remembered. The air was warm but heavy, like standing inside a forgotten dream. Lyra walked ahead of him, the crystal flickering in her hand. "This place was never meant to open again," she said softly. "It remembers pain." Ray scanned the area with his blaster ready. "Pain from what?" She stopped and looked back at him. "From us." They reached a platform that overlooked a massive pit. Below it, thousands of pods lined the walls, some cracked open, some still sealed with frost. In the center, a single throne made of metal. and Bone stood beneath a glowing star-shaped device. Ray whispered, "What is this?" Lyra stepped forward. "This is where they ended us. The last test, the last lie." Suddenly, a high-pitched sound rang out. Ray fell to one knee, holding his ears. The crystal in Lyra's hand sparked, then dimmed. She gasped and dropped it. It rolled across the floor, toward the edge of the pit. Ray dove after it, grabbing it just before it fell. Got it. But something else had awakened. A loud hiss echoed through the vault. One of the pods below cracked open. Another followed. Then a third, Lyra shouted. "They're waking. They shouldn't be waking." Ray stood, looking down as dark shapes crawled from the pods. Not alive, not dead. Their skin was pale and stretched tight, eyes glowing faint red, faces twisted with old screams. They were never meant to live, Lyra said. They were broken copies, used for experiments. Ray aimed. "Do they know who we are?" "They don't care," she whispered. "They only know pain." One of the creatures leapt toward the ledge. Ray fired. The blast knocked it back. But three more followed. Lyra grabbed the crystal from his hand and held it high. But it didn't. "Respond, I can't charge it here," she cried. "The flame is too weak." Ray reloaded. "Then we fight." The creatures swarmed. Ray blasted two, kicked a third, but one grabbed his arm and bit deep into his shoulder. Blood sprayed across the floor. Lyra screamed, running to him. She touched his wound, and suddenly, the crystal glowed bright red. The light shot through her arm and into Ray's skin. His vision blurred and then cleared. He saw flashes. Lyra as a child, screaming in a dark tank. Scientists watching her drown and heal again and again. Her first memory was pain. Her only family was silence. Ray fell backward, gasping. "I saw everything." Lyra knelt beside him, tears in her eyes. "And now you carry it." He looked at his arm. The wound had closed. The pain was gone. But something remained. Something not his, her memory. The crystal pulsed stronger now, and the creatures stopped. One by one, they stepped back, tilting their heads as if confused. "They sense you," Lyra said. "You're not just a man to them anymore. Your memory." Ray stood slowly, pointing the crystal forward. The creatures howled and fled into the pit. The light followed them, burning through the darkness. Silence returned. Ray looked at Lyra. "What did you do to me?" She touched his chest gently. "I gave you my pain." He shook his head. "Why?" She looked down. "Because I was never strong enough to carry it alone." The vault trembled, and the star-shaped device in the center began to fall apart. A small cube rose from inside it, pulsing, ancient, calling. Ray picked it up. "Another key?" Lyra nodded. "The second ember key. It points to the one who started it all." Ray stared at the cube, feeling something deep inside shift, like a locked door slowly opening. He looked back at Lyra. "You said humans created your kind." She nodded slowly. "But one of them broke the rule. He tried to make something more. Something too close to life, too close to love." Ray gripped the cube tightly. "And now?" Lyra stepped close, voice trembling. "Now? He's the only one who can end it." Suddenly, alarms blared from Ray's wrist console. A signal. Someone was coming, fast, armed and close. Ray looked at her. "Hunters?" Lyra shook her head. "No. Then who?" Ray asked. She closed her eyes. "The one who never died." Asterisk. The vault collapsed behind them as the tunnel caved in. Dust filled the air, thick as smoke. Ray and Lyra ran through the underground corridors, guided only by the flickering light of the ember key cube. Ray's wound had healed, but something inside him still burned. Not pain, memory, hers, and something else. Something older, colder, deeper. He stopped suddenly. "This path, it's changing." Lyra looked around, confused. "It's reacting to the key. It wants to show us something." The floor shifted beneath them, and a hidden platform began to lower, taking them deeper, far below the ice, into a part of the planet not listed on any map. Ray stared at the walls. Metallic, ancient, covered in symbols. Not alien, not human, But both Lyra touched the surface. This was the first lab, she said softly. The place where they made the mistake. Ray didn't like the word mistake, you mean. Where your kind was created. Lyra shook her head. Where something else was. The platform stopped, and the doors opened. What lay beyond was not a room, but a battlefield, frozen in time. Hundreds of bodies, alien, human, machine. Lay scattered across a wide arena, burn marks, shattered armor, broken blades, all untouched by time, suspended in a strange blue field of energy. Ray whispered, "What happened here?" Lyra stepped forward, her voice quiet like a prayer. The war below. The day the creators lost control. Suddenly the field blinked, and time snapped back into motion. One of the soldiers, a half-metal humanoid, gasped and sat up, screaming in pain. Ray aimed, but Lyra held up her hand. "No, he's not alive. Just a memory playing out." The soldier crawled forward, dragging himself across the floor, leaving a trail of sparks and blood. He reached toward the center of the room, toward a blackened figure sitting on a throne of steel. Ray stepped closer, heart racing. The figure was not breathing, but it hadn't decayed either. It looked human, barely wrapped in dark armor. Its chest burned open. Wires fused into flesh. A name glowed on the base of the throne. Flickering in red, Project Ethon. Ray read it out loud. Project Ethon, what is this? Lyra closed her eyes. The first and last hybrid. He was like you? Ray asked. She shook her head. No, he was like you. Ray stepped back, confused. That's impossible. Lyra pointed to the throne. He was a human scientist who went too far. He didn't want to just make life, he wanted to become something greater. He fused his own mind with alien DNA and neural tech. He wanted to live forever. Ray looked again at the blackened figure. Did he succeed? Before she could answer, the body twitched. Ray raised his weapon. Lyra, she stepped back, eyes wide. That's not supposed to happen. The throne lit up. The body sat upright, and the voice that came was not human, not alien, not machine. It was all three. Another bearer of the flame. Finally, Ray shouted, "Who are you?" The figure stood slowly, its eyes glowing with burning white light. "I am the consequence." Suddenly, the ground shook violently. Lights burst, alarms screamed, and doors opened across the walls, releasing more pods, more soldiers, half dead, half wired. Lyra gasped. He's waking the old army. Ray aimed the ember key toward the throne, but it only pulsed weakly. The hybrid stepped forward, towering, voice echoing through the room. You carry her pain, her memory, her guilt. But do you carry the flame? Ray stood tall. I carry my choice. He threw the ember key into the air, and for a moment, it hovered, then burst into light, wrapping around his body. It didn't burn him. It accepted him. Lyra stared in awe. He's sinking with it. The hybrid charged, roaring with power. The army behind him followed. Ray raised his hand, now glowing with the light of the flame, and said calmly, "Then let's finish what you started." The chamber exploded into chaos. Fire met metal. Memory clashed with machines. Ray moved through them like a storm, not alone, but surrounded by 1,000 forgotten voices that had waited for justice. Lyra fought beside him, fast and fierce, her blade cutting through steel, her heart full of fear and fire. And in the center of it all, the hybrid and the human collided. Asterisk silence followed the storm. The hybrid's body lay in ruin, broken against the shattered throne. The army had collapsed with it, like puppets cut from their strings, sparks fading into ash. Ray stood in the middle of the battlefield, chest heaving, hands glowing faintly with the last light of the ember key. The fire around him flickered, then faded, leaving only smoke, metal, and memory. Lyra limped toward him, her armor cracked, eyes full of awe and sorrow. She placed a hand on his chest, feeling the warmth still in his skin. "You survived it," she whispered. No one was meant to survive it. Ray looked at the broken throne. He wanted to become more than human. Lyra nodded. But he forgot what it means to be human. Ray turned to her, voice quiet. What does it mean? She smiled gently. To burn and still choose to care. They stood there for a moment, surrounded by death and silence. Then Lyra dropped to her knees, the crystal in her hand now dark and cracked completely. She was shaking, her skin turning pale again. Ray rushed to her. Lyra? She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. The flame chose you, not me. I gave it everything. And it still left me behind. Ray knelt beside her, holding her close. You gave me a reason to fight. That's more than power, that's purpose. She coughed weak. The others, the sleeping ones. They need someone to guide them, to tell them the war is over. Ray looked at the ruins. The vault now quiet. We'll wake them together. She shook her head. I don't have much time left. The flame kept me alive longer than I should have. Lasted. Ray held her tighter. Then take mine. Lyra looked into his eyes. You can't share fire, Ray. It burns or it doesn't. He closed his eyes. Then don't leave me in the dark. She smiled, a soft, sad smile. You gave me one night, just one night to feel like I was more than a weapon. Ray kissed her forehead gently. You were never a weapon. The room around them began to collapse, the structure finally giving way, but the ember key, now split into two glowing halves, floated between them, pulsing like a heartbeat. Lyra reached out with her last strength and touched one half. Take the other, she said. Keep the flame alive. Ray grabbed it, and in that moment, her light passed into his, not just power, but memory. Laughter, tears, her dreams, her fears, everything she was, now part of him. She leaned against his shoulder, voice fading. You'll build something better, won't you? Ray nodded. I'll build it in your name. She smiled one last time. Then I'm not afraid to go. Her body turned to light in his arms, then to sparks, and then to silence. Ray stood alone now, surrounded by flickers of her energy floating through the air like fireflies. The ember key pulsed in his palm, no longer red or gold, but blue, like the sky Earth once had. He stepped out of the vault into the rising sunlight. The snowstorm finally gone. On the ridge ahead, the first of the sleepers emerged from the deep ice, blinking into freedom. They stared at Ray, confused, afraid. He raised the glowing key high into the air and said only one word. Home, for the first time in generations. The forgotten children of fire and science looked up and didn't see war. They saw a beginning, and far above in the stars, Earth listened, waiting for a signal it had long stopped hoping for. The flame had returned, and this time it would never go out.